Namaskar. Welcome to the afternoon session of P Gurus with Utsav Chakrabarti. We have been following the Russia-Ukraine war. See, there is an interesting thread twinning that is going on, in our opinion, that there are some things that Russia is doing that India perhaps is waiting for it to play out before it starts continuing its trade discussions with the United States. Why this is and why we are connecting the dots this way, Utsav is going to explain to us, and he's also going to show us the current situation on the ground as to where the forces are arrayed. Let's welcome Utsav. Utsav, namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel. How are you?
Namaste, Shri. I'm very happy to be here.
So, Utsav, we're going to jump straight into the situation as far as the map or the situation on the ground is concerned. The last time we were talking about how 2 or 3 critical cities were in play and that Putin was trying to, going to try and capture those in the next few weeks, I think 4 or 5 weeks ago. So I'm going to just put up the map now, and you can talk to the map and give us an update on where things are as it stands today. Here we go. Go ahead.
Wonderful. So if you zoom into the central part of the map, and right in the blue dot in the middle that you see, keep scrolling down, and towards the right where the yellow and the red meet, there are a bunch of blue dots. So if you just move further lower than that, yes. So further down. Zoom into that region, and I can discuss some of the things that are unfolding towards the left, slightly, bottom left. Keep going lower, and a little bit lower than that, further down, and a little bit further down, and a little pan to the right, So, yes, and so if you zoom into that area, that is the most important area of conversation at this point in the conflict. And that is probably one of the critical points of failures that the Ukrainians and the NATO allies will further, keep panning up. Correct, keep panning up, So that is the city of Pokrovsk. It is a pretty important logistical hub in the Donetsk region. And this city, as you can see, the red or the reddish color tone is the Russian area of control. And this Russian area of control, if you zoom out a little, you will see that Russia has pretty much surrounded the Ukrainians in that city. If you zoom out further a little bit. Yes, that's it. Perfect. So you will see that in the middle there is the city of Pokrovsk. Right in the center of this image is their railway station, which is their main logistical hub. Everything south of the railway station has been taken by the Russian, barring that little spot in the middle, which pretty much is under Russian control, but hasn't been cleared completely of Ukrainians. So there might be a couple of dozen Ukrainian soldiers left in these houses. These are small single-family homes. But the rest of the city is pretty much in complete control of the Russians. On the left side of this frame that you see is the railway station, where you see the points where the train station meets. Yes. So all of these places are now under Russian control, and the Ukrainians have about 10,000 people stuck in this area. If you zoom out further, a little bit further, if you zoom out, So this area is called the Pokrovsk-Mirnohad pocket. So it's the twin city of Pokrovsk and Mirnohad. And on the right is the city of Mirnohad, and on the left that you were showing is Pokrovsk. There are about 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers that are going to be completely surrounded, because all the roads into this area is under Russian control, or the major roads. So there cannot be any mechanized movement. Nobody can move with a car or a tank or an armored vehicle out of this. They have to move out on foot. And in that case, they are going to be targeted by drones, and there's probably going to be 80 to 90% casualty. So that is a critical point of failure in the conflict at this point right now as we speak. And that was what the situation was when Putin and Trump and Zelensky spoke last week. So, you heard a lot of back and forth. Initially, President Trump was kind of moving towards giving Tomahawk missiles. Then he backtracked and wanted to find peace. And then he went again and backtracked. And President Trump said that we are going to put sanctions on Russia, and really severe sanctions at this point of time. So you have to look at those decisions in the context of the ground realities and the tactical and the operational situation on the ground. And that doesn't look good for Ukraine at this time, right now. So city of Pokrovsk in very, very severe trouble, more than 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers trapped there. If you go a little bit further to the right, up on top, you will see that there is another pocket that is being created up a little bit. Zoom out a little and go up. Yeah, keep going. Yes, on the right side there. So you have this little pocket on the right side to the northeast of Pokrovsk, and that pocket is called the Sukhova pocket. So that is another pocket where the Ukrainians initially, when Pokrovsk was under severe threat, tried to do a counterattack, and they put some of their best special forces in that space to try to cut the Russians off from the northeast. And they failed in that. So now you have the Sukhova pocket in which the Russians have again surrounded the Ukrainians. And you see this small little U-shaped cauldron, which is what the military term is used to describe it. No, further down. This blue area that is a kind of a holdout surrounded by red on three sides. That's the pocket that the Ukrainians are under again. And there the Ukrainian special forces are trapped. A lot of the Azov and some of the more elite troops, more motivated troops that the Ukrainians have, they are kind of trapped there. So that's another bad situation that the Ukrainians are in. If you zoom out further and move to the right, you have the city of Konstantinivka. Zoom out a little bit further. Yes. And you can see there are two arms, two tentacles of red sticking into this city of Konstantinivka on the right side there on the red. Further up, move your mouse. Yeah. So
I got it.
Yeah. So you can see that the Russians are now moving into the city of Konstantinivka on the right side of that frame. That's another major city that is getting targeted right now. And by the time the Pokrovsk pocket is completely surrounded or closed within the next week or so, this city, Konstantinivka, is going to come under the next Russian targeting. So that city might fall as well within the next 1 or 2 months, I would say. So before the end of 2025, you would see Konstantinivka fall. And if you zoom out further, you will see that to the north of this frame that you have the city of Kramatorsk. Keep moving north. Keep moving north. Yeah. Towards your left of the. Yeah. So no, slightly to the left. Left. Zoom out a little. Yeah. So you will see Kramatorsk to the north of Konstantinivka on the left side, and then further north you will see the city of Slavyansk. So once both Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka fall to the Russians within the end of this year, you will see Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, all the roads leading to, or the major logistical routes leading to Kramatorsk and Slavyansk getting cut off. So that would be pretty much the end game of the Russians in the Donetsk region. And I think that is what Putin wants in the short term in this war. So you see Slavyansk.
If I just connect the dots here, Utsav, see the mouse. From there, they can just cut across and join up to this red here. And that would be the...
Yeah. So that pocket, that complete pocket, which is the Lyman, Siversk, Konstantinivka, Pokrovsk pocket, which also includes the twin city of Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, is what Putin wants as part of the withdrawal for the Ukrainians. So President Putin from Russia has said that you either withdraw from that region and save lives, which President Trump initially was quite supportive of, or you want to fight it to the end and lose another 1,000 people, 2,000 people a week on both sides. And that's the tragedy of what we are facing right now. So these negotiations and conversations and back and forth and sanctions, all these things are basically about this initial demand of that pocket the line that you drew just now. That is where the battle is. And I think, in my understanding, I think the Russians are not going to stop until they get that. That is the bare minimum that they are trying to get in this conflict in the short term. Now, if you move further north of what you were pointing out and go up a little bit to the north, zoom in and then go up. No. In the same place. No. So go back to the conflict zone, and zoom in and pan down. Now you go up, and that is the city of, if you zoom in further, in there, whatever is in the center, just keep zooming in. Yes. So you have the city of Kupiansk down a little, further down, where the red area is. Keep doing down, keep going down. Towards the left, pan to the left. Keep down. Yes, further down. Zoom in a little. Keep panning to the left. Keep going down. Once you see again the conflict area between Ukraine and Russia.
We are in that.
This is all Russian controlled right now. So red and the yellow is essentially all Russian controlled. So move to the left a little. Yes. So keep moving to the left. Once you see the blue, I'll zoom out a little bit. Yes. So further to the left, pan to the left. Yes. So that pocket that you see is the Kupiansk pocket. And if you zoom out a little bit more, I can show you where the city of Kupiansk, which is very important. Yes. So you see the red on the top is the city of Kupiansk. And the Russians have already captured about half of the city. And on the left side, so they are in the center of the city. They have pretty much taken control of the major downtown area. There is a river to the right. So the Russians basically want to capture everything to the west of that river so that the Ukrainians get trapped on the right side of the river. And that is another, trapping cauldron that they are trying to create. And everybody on the right side, on the Ukrainian side, which is still under Ukrainian control, will get trapped because they have blown up all the bridges to the left of the river. So what the Russians are doing is basically taking over the entire left and keep crawling down and connect with the red on the right side and trap the Ukrainians in about 200 square mile area on the right of the river. And that is going to be the next big cauldron and the next big trap for the Ukrainians in the beginning of 2026 if this war continues. So that
salami slicing.
They are literally salami slicing, and they are this is typically what the Russians used to do, and it's a very old tactics. So many of us in the West, especially NATO generals, used to make fun of that. This is World War II tactics, like you surround enemies through, but this seems to work in a long drawn out conflict of attrition, and it seems to be working now in Ukraine. And we need to know that this is working in Ukraine, because if you see the exchange of the dead bodies, and I think I sent you a graphics that shows.
I'll take this thing out, and I'll show that. Go for it.
So this is basically the exchange of dead bodies between the Russians and the Ukrainians in the year 2025. Actually, it starts with, mostly in the year 2025. So it starts with January 24th, when the first body exchange happened. You can see that the number of Ukrainians dead being returned by the Russians, which is the blue and the yellow flag, versus the number of Russians dead being returned by the Ukrainians to the Russians during this exchange of bodies. And you will see there is almost a 39-to-1 ratio of the dead. Now, we have to understand, keep in account that Russians are the one capturing land. So many a times their dead are already in their land, and therefore they are not exchanging them. They are only taking them back to their families and their graveyards. Whereas because Ukraine is losing land, many a times the dead of the Ukraine are in the Russian controlled area, so therefore they need to exchange. But even considering that statistics, even if you assume that 50 to 60% of this is because Russia is the one capturing land, therefore they're not leaving their dead behind, it's still a pretty staggering number, given the fact in the last 2.5 years, Ukraine, which is a much smaller country with much lesser resources, assuming, we all know that NATO is pretty much backing Ukraine to the end game here, at least that's what they have declared. It's still first of all, it's tragic that both sides are losing at this rate, young men and women who are fighting. And secondly, it's even more tragic that Ukraine has almost a 39-to-1 deficit in the number of people being killed. And my fear is, and I think this is something that most of us globally who are analyzing this war, because the reason I'm looking into this war so seriously is because this impacts everything around the world. What is happening on the ground is literally impacting the global economies. It's impacting how countries are talking to each other. It's impacting how India is looking at the war and its economy. It's impacting how our country, America, is dealing with the rest of the world. So that's why we are going into so much detail about what's happening on the ground. And if you look at that, first of all, it's tragic. And secondly, I don't think Ukraine has the ability at this point to logistically keep up the war for too long. No matter what kind of sanctions, the West, America, our country, Europe, issues, and what kind of sanctions they apply on Russia. So it's a fight to the last man. I think that's happening right now, which is very tragic. But that's where we are at this point in the conflict.
So, Utsav, the areas that Russia is going after, are they majority Russian-speaking areas? So the Ukrainian soldiers themselves are actually foreigners in their own country?
I won't call them foreigners in their own country. Technically, they are all Ukrainians by nationality. But it is absolutely true, and we have to understand that most of these regions that Russians are fighting for right now, majority of the populations in these places are Russian-speaking. Majority of the people consider themselves ethnically Russians. And I won't say all of the people, but a big majority of the people do want to be part of Russia. That is the truth. We have to understand it. Many of them are unwilling to leave their houses also when the war reaches them. And many of them end up supporting Russians once they capture those areas. And they say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to stay here. If we die, we die. But if the Russians take this area, we are happy to be part of Russia.
So what kind of madness is it on part of Ukraine to continue to, wage this war? They don't have any money. They're completely dependent on NATO and USA for resources. And we are also hearing that MI6 has a fairly big footprint in Ukraine that UK is not letting on. So in other words, UK is already waging a proxy war with Russia, according to Russia. This is looking pointless at this point of time. What exactly is Ukraine's end game here?
See, it's an unfortunate reality that most Ukrainians, I would differentiate here between the leadership of Ukraine versus the people of Ukraine, because the leadership of Ukraine obviously has a different set of goals and objectives they seem to be trying to achieve. But the people of Ukraine obviously are not always on the same page in terms of what they want to achieve, but they obviously don't have any voice at this point of time, as I see it. But you are correct. And, Prime Minister of UK, Keir Starmer, has actually said that last week very clearly that this is an existential war for UK. So I think the UK still sees itself as a global actor. The UK and its leadership, especially its intellectual and thought leadership and its military leadership, carries a historical memory of being a global actor. They remember, and I spoke about this in our previous conversation, the charge of the Light Brigade and how they fought the Battle of Crimea, where the British and the Turks, the Ottoman Turks, were actually fighting the Russians, and they were in the same place. They were fighting in these same places. So the UK sees itself as an active player in this war from a historical perspective as much as it sees itself from a European perspective and a NATO perspective. And I think that's why it's easier for UK to put in resources to convince its own population that this war needs to be fought on behalf of Ukraine. And in fact, if you were to believe our own media in America, Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and all these outlets, mainstream media outlets, there seems to be some conflict between President Trump and Ukraine and UK too, the British too, on this issue, where President Trump seems to be trying to push for a more aggressive dialogue towards peace. Whereas the rest of Europe, especially UK, France to some extent, and NATO, NATO as an entity, is saying, no, we need to keep fighting, and this is working. Eventually, Russia will not be able to keep doing what it's doing, and eventually we may be able to collapse Russian economy. And that is, I think, their holy grail that they're trying to achieve. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not so sure that will work, but they're trying.
Now, what made Trump, according to you, change his mind about meeting Putin in Budapest?
So 3 things happened. I think Trump is caught between 2 thought leaderships in the West. His own cabinet has many people who genuinely want this war to continue. they are closer to the thought process that was there during Biden administration's time. And then there are many people in his cabinet, which I would say one of them would be J.D. Vance, one of them would be Tulsi Gabbard. At least two of them would be very openly pushing for a peace deal as quickly as possible, and a more realistic compromise based on ground realities in the battle space. So I think Trump is kind of moving back and forth between these two ideas. He seems to be pushing for peace as much as possible with President Putin. I think Putin from Russia is also trying to make Trump feel special and encourage him to take on the side that is against war within his own cabinet. So it's a jostling happening, jostling of ideas, jostling of power centers within America and in Europe. And at this point of time, I'm not sure if they have a final say on which side's ideas are prevailing. Because given what we just did, America just did in terms of putting sanctions on Russia, on its two major oil companies, and the fact that just when Budapest Budapest talks were being announced between Trump and Putin in Hungary, the next day, out of magic, the biggest oil refinery in Hungary, which was owned by Russia, was completely blown up and destroyed. It just happened magically. And the same thing happened.
And by whom? By whom?
Exactly. By whom? And exactly the same thing happened in Romania. Again, one of the largest Russian-owned oil refineries in Romania. Both of these oil refineries supply a big chunk of the oil that both Hungary and Romania use, who are, by the way, are part of NATO, was again magically blown up by some entity. So it's a lot of cloak and daggers behind the scenes, a lot of shadow war, a lot of intelligence operations going on. If you remember, back in 2022, the German pipeline between Russia and Germany, Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 1 magically got blown up. So, it's hard to say, but people who can guess who are involved in it. And, I will leave it at that. Most people who are observing what is going on can figure out who is in play here. But to answer your question, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And let me also tell our viewers that Utsav just finished a very successful trip where he toured the breadth and length of United States with a team of people about Hindu Action and what it stands for. Talk to us and just summarize that. And also we're going to talk about the next upcoming engagement that Utsav is going to be participating in. We'll talk about that also. First, the trip that you just finished.
Yes, so Hindu Action embarked on a project to travel around. So this is the one that I'm going to be doing afterwards. So this is I will be participating in an online event. So please RSVP. Click on the QR code or look at the tiny URL link that we have here. It's going to be a very important conversation, given if you're following the news in America right now, about how illegal immigration, asylum abuse, and transnational drug running, and I would add to that weapons running, is a threat to North America. It talks about some of the Khalistani operatives that are involved in these things. So it's going to be a fascinating conversation. I'm very honored to be involved and to be invited in this. I'm going to be in the company of very sharp minds. Mark Black, who is a senior fellow at GIIS and a retired NYPD officer. Daniel Boardman, Ruchi Wali, and of course, I will be honored to be asked questions by Adel Nazarian. So if you guys are people who are listening and watching can join this and share this around, please do so. This is an important conversation for America. And to talk about the previous visit that we did, in the first 2 weeks of October, around the third anniversary of October 7th, the Israelis, when Israelis were murdered by Hamas, we had a guest named Uri Goldflam, who is an Israeli expert. Uri and myself and my team, we did a 7-city tour, bringing Jewish and Hindu communities together. We started in Washington, D.C., went to New York, then Cincinnati, then Dallas, then Houston, then San Francisco Bay Area, and ended in Beverly Hills in California. We got a tremendous response from the community. So, both the Jews and the Hindus, more so the Jews, American Jewish community, came in huge numbers. Actually, I would say other than in Bay Area, everywhere else we had more Jews participating than Hindus in these events. And what we did was we discussed some of the core historical and geopolitical issues that affect our communities, and discuss some of the threat perceptions, shared threat perceptions we have, and what we can do to deal with it. We did not, there are some of the cultural things that our communities have already been doing. We celebrate Diwali, Hanukkah together, and we do many things together as communities over the last years. But we never had an honest, public, geopolitical and threat perception conversation. Bare bones conversation where we discuss things very openly and what we have facing in the next generation. And this is what we were able to achieve, and we are very happy to be able to do that.
Wonderful, sir, and looking forward to the session on November 14th, I think, November 5th.
November 5th.
At 11 a.m. EST, which means 8 a.m. for those of you who are watching it from Pacific time. So it's somewhere in between. You'll be following for Mountain Time and Central Time. And we'll be following this war closely. Now, the important topic that I wanted to ask you, how does all this affect India? Because with 31 companies under the new sanctions, Rosneft and Lukoil are the big ones, but there is a whole satellite of companies around them, carriers, insurance companies, logistical companies, and things like that. How does this affect India's buying crude from Russia? Is there going to be a temporary pain at the pump?
I believe so. So I think there are a couple of scenarios that are going to unfold. And the first scenario, and the worst case scenario, is going to be that in the short term, India will have to cut down on Russian oil imports. And India has already started doing that. How much it is going to affect the people in India at the pump needs to be seen, because India has already created a very solid and healthy stockpile of gas and oil reserves over the last 2 years. So India can obviously dig into that stockpile in the short term and keep a stable price. But this will impact Indian imports. This will impact Russian exports. And also the fact that Ukraine, and with the help of NATO allies, has successfully been able to target many Russian oil refineries in the last couple of weeks. So that has also impacted Russia. So in the short term, both India and China are going to actively reduce buying Russian oil, but both have developed a very, very healthy supply of reserves. So in the long term, it needs to be seen how it impacts all of the countries around the world, because I don't think that the West itself, especially NATO, can keep up these sanctions for too long, because eventually Europe is going to start paying a very high price for oil and natural gas, which it is already paying at this point. And it is very hard to keep them at that level. They are literally cutting their nose to spite their face. And that is going to be impacting Europe as well. So it needs to be seen how long Russia can sustain this lack of revenue in the short term and medium term. If Russia itself is able to sustain this for another 6 months and continue to keep the tempo on the ground in the battle space that it already has, I think it's not going to affect anybody negatively, and it will backfire. However, if beyond 6 months, if Russia is still feeling the pain of it, then it might actually have some impact on the ground realities and on the global economy. And that needs to be seen. I think that's what America and the West wants. So to be more retrospective about it, most of the sanctions that have been imposed in the past, Europe has imposed 19 different sanction phases, haven't brought out the results they were aimed to bring. So I don't know what happens with the 20th one. Let's see.
Well, thank you so much, Utsav. And Europe itself is in a lot of pain. I've been telling you about this, viewers. I even compared how the average German is actually poorer than an average Italian. Hard as that might be to believe. We have a video that's going to come up soon. You'll see that. And there's not all is well between UK, Germany, and France. They've got themselves into a lot of problem because of a phenomenon called strip mining. Private equity has come and basically, culled out all the useful assets of many of company here, and the pension funds are the ones who are directly affected from that. If pension funds stop paying out, the pension money on a monthly basis, all hell is going to break loose. Which country is first? My estimate is United Kingdom is number one, and perhaps France number two, and Germany, because of its size, number three. But so the set of sanctions is actually going to accelerate this process. So you are absolutely spot on. Spiting your nose because you don't like your face is exactly what they are doing. And Trump needs to kind of reflect, why is he changing his attitude? And is United States prepared to shell out these Tomahawk missiles? These are expensive. Only 4 can be manufactured in a month, and they've already spent, I think, 30 in Iran. And even now you'll have to count 1, 2, 3. How many do I want to spare for Ukraine? And even if they do deploy it and it does cause damage, so what? Putin has a plan. Does NATO/Ukraine/US have one? That is the question. We'll be visiting this again with Utsav. Viewers, this is a very objective look. We are not taking any sides here. People are all suffering. And this pain is going to come to United States as well as to India, the two places that perhaps we are, watching closely. And Canada and others are all going to be, everybody is going to suffer from this. Let's wait and see how, smoothly this gets moved forward. Thanks once again, Utsav. We'll talk about Gaza another day, because that's another story that is taking shape.
That was the conversation we had in the 7-city tour. I thanks to my colleague Uri Goldflam, who came from Israel over the last 20 days, I got a whole deal of new understanding and new set of information from how the Israelis are looking at it. So we'll have another conversation.
We'll get you back in a few days for that one. Viewers, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. There's one question from Magnet Ranga. First off, KSSAM, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. And Magnet Ranga wants to know, Trump is pushing Russia to stop the war. Can he get Europe to stop helping Ukraine, and perhaps he himself stops arms supply if he's serious about stopping the war?
So, Magnet Ranga, that's a very good point. It's a pressure tactics. So, both Trump and the Europeans are trying to put pressure on Russians. One wants to be the good cop, which is Trump. Obviously, Europe has chosen to be the bad cop for the last 4.5 years. So it's a good cop, bad cop tactics. Is it working on Russia? I don't know. Maybe not. It doesn't seem like it's working on Russia. But that's basically the simple game plan out there. It's a good cop, bad cop tactics. At the end of the day, we all know that Europe itself cannot sustain Ukraine in a conflict with Russia for more than a month or two. American help is needed to Ukraine for it to be able to be any fighting condition. Whether it is intelligence sharing, whether it is logistical help, or whether it is weapons supply, bullets and guns, and from basics to tanks and other armored vehicles. So everything. America is the only country which has the capability to sustain this war in the long term.
Thank you so much, Utsav. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.
Namaste.